Today is Wednesday, December 10th, 2014. This is Delegate Hangout number 2 for the Bitshares Super DAC. We're talking with Wackou, and he is planning to run for a delegate slot. I guess right now would be a good time to ask you if you can give us an introduction. You can give us your real name, or you can tell us that you plan to be anonymous. Either way is fine. And then we'll get into some other questions for you.
Okay, so hi everyone. So my real name is Nicholas Wack. I was kind of anonymous for some time, but then my real name is on my GitHub anyway, so it wouldn't be a lot of work for someone to figure it out. Well, I've started programming when I was 8 years old, then didn't get so much into it in my teen years, and then started again when I entered university, discovered free software, and I loved the idea that I could tinker and see everything in my computer. And I've been a C++ programmer for the last, let's say, 15 years or so. I did mostly audio analysis, and started also Python programming 10 years ago, and where I did also audio analysis, scientific stuff, NumPy, etc. More recently, a bit of web development, mostly backend, but also a bit of front end. Yes, that's pretty much me. And I've heard about Bitshares and Quixote actually in that time. Was November last year. And I got hooked on the first Invictus websites actually, which they talked to me in a really strong way. I liked the text a lot. It was not very Web 2.0-ish, so it was not for a very wide audience. But I loved the spirit, and I thought that ProtoShares was really a great idea, like the share dropping on other coins that would solve the problem of fair distribution, which was really endemic at the time. There were lots of coins that were pre-mined, and everyone was like, yeah, and proof of stake, this is only like for cabal of people, and this is not fair at all. And so I saw that ProtoShares would solve that in a really brilliant way. And then I started reading more about the DACs, and that's the point where actually I tipped over and kind of got out of all the other coins I was like investigating, and went pretty much only in Bitshares, because first of all, it was the project that was the most open at the time. Open source, like everything on GitHub since day one. I love that people talk on the forums openly, and even though sometimes like they get criticized for doing this, and investors, they like to have final decision and not people thinking out loud in the forums. I kind of liked it because that's more like the way I work and I think.
Sure. If we could back up a little bit before even you got into Bitshares, what got you into cryptocurrency in general? Could you give us a little bit of details regarding that?
Well, I started, actually I dabbled a little bit in 2011 with Bitcoin, and somehow I didn't get hooked at the time and forgot about it. And then I got in again in the boom of was it March 2013? Or May 2000, well, around that time, the big boom after Cyprus and all these things. And then I read about it, and I don't know, this time I got hooked, started reading about it. And once I read about it, actually, I think it was before even I read the Bitcoin paper, but when I realized that it was completely decentralized, and it was something that was never done before, and I couldn't say exactly what got me hooked, but I had this intuition that there was a technological breakthrough here. And since then, I've been reading more and more about everything that's crypto related, and I'm completely fascinated by it. I think it's one of the biggest inventions since the internet. Well, actually, I think it's the biggest invention since the internet. And the way I see it, well, I'm not going to say that the internet was only invented to be able to do this, but it's the foundation of it. And I think it's only the dawn of everything that we will be able to do with blockchain related technology. Everyone always says that Bitcoin is only the first DAC, but I doubt that most people actually realize what that means in the end.
It's interesting that we are here so early, and sometimes we get so impatient. That's something that I personally struggle with at times, because you think that everybody should understand it when you understand about the Bitshares ecosystem and some other projects out there. You touched upon why you were so interested in Bitshares in general. Would you mind going into? There's one community question actually touches upon that as well, and it's why do you have faith in Bitshares X or Bitshares rather over other 2.0 cryptocurrencies, communities, and environments? And if you don't, why not? But I think that that part we can cut off, and we can just ask you, why do you have faith in Bitshares over other crypto communities and cryptocurrencies? Would you be able to give us a little bit of details regarding that, or if there are other projects that you're also interested in?
Yes. I'm kind of interested out of curiosity in all the projects, but I really believe that Bitshares is the most advanced one. I mean, technologically, first of all, when Bytemaster and Invictus and those guys came up with the concept of a DAC, I mean, that was really an analogy and a concept that really talked to me and made a lot of sense. And for instance, the Bitcoin mining, I never saw it before as a waste of money, but then you realize that you can have the same type of system and which has a sound economic basis. And then you say, well, it is actually burning stuff. It's burning money and it's burning energy. And this wouldn't make sense in a company. And if you're trying to, I don't like this expression, but it's used a lot. But if you're trying to create value, well, you should try to create something, not just go on about this. And so the reason I still convinced that Bitshares is the best is well, first of all, I'm really impressed by the dev team. I mean, I'm a C++ programmer myself, and I look at the code, and I mean, it's really impressive what the amount of code they write and the quality of the code they write. And I believe that probably they have one of the three best teams in crypto right now. I consider Ethereum to be really interesting too, but I think that they're overambitious, and I think I like the idea of Ethereum a lot, and I think that on paper it's a brilliant idea. In practice, I feel that it might be too fragile. That, for instance, if there's some catastrophic bug, or problem with the system, that everything goes down. Bitshares now is the super DAC. Before it was different DACs, so I was kind of there was the argument that if there's a problem maybe with Bitshares DNS, then Bitshares X still survives, and this, which is not really the case anymore. But still, the two, I believe Bitshares, Ethereum, Counterparty are the three most interesting projects. I don't know too much about Counterparty and a technical detail, but I think they have also a good view of the things and a good understanding of what is or will be possible. But also, I mean, there's the openness of the Bitshares guy, which I like a lot. And I mean, like, there's this thing about free software that you say that there's like 1,000 eyes and they look at more bugs, but there's also the openness in the way you lead the project, and I think that that's also important, as because it allows more diversity and I mean feedback from the community, and I think that's also something that will help in the long term, even on a technical point of view. And the main reason also I believe that Bitshares is so good is because of delegated proof of stake. I mean, that's really fantastic. If you look at what it brings to the table, now it's used to pay also other delegates, but otherwise would be inflationary. I mean, the cost of the security brought by delegated proof of stake compared to the cost of securing a blockchain with Bitcoin or proof of work, I mean, it's huge, and it makes a huge difference.
I agree with you. I think we all tend to agree with you here. So if you don't mind, we'll go ahead then. Thank you for the answer to that question. We'll move on to the second question. And we know that you have a detailed plan of how you're going to use your resources that you've placed on the forums. But if you could expound upon that a little bit for the listening audience who might not be able to read your proposal on the forums, that would be very helpful.
Okay. So mostly, well, my plan is it's twofold. One, the first part is to keep developing the BTS tools that I've started developing since Bitshares launched, which are some monitoring tools that helps Delegate to run the client, to monitor that everything's fine, that if there's a problem such that the client crashes, then it sends you an email or an iOS push notification. And I'd like to keep developing those tools, and I'd like to dedicate some time to it. But free time is a scarce resource, so possibly I'd like for it to cover a part of my salary, and maybe move from my full-time job right now to maybe half-time, and then the other half would be paid by this delegate pay. On a second part, this would also, well, first of all, it pays for the servers, of course, because I have a VPS. The second part would be to pay for more nodes, because one of the part of my mission is trying to help to make the Bitshares network more secure, and I believe this goes towards having some specialized nodes that help. For instance, like now there's the chain download nodes that help to have a faster initial sync with the network. There are seed nodes that, the more seed nodes we have, the better. And I think that would be useful to have more of those. But mostly, I would like to be hired by the blockchain. That would be nice.
Yeah, it's kind of cool that this is a unique environment where this can actually happen. Of course, we have like the Bitshares, the Bitcoin Foundation and things like that, who they've essentially been hired by the blockchain. But this is the first time that it's done in a relatively decentralized fashion. To my knowledge, it's the first time. So it's really cool, yeah. Number 3 is pretty much an extension of the second question. What will you do with any extra resources if they exceed your plan?
There's a few possibilities. So the first one is I burn the surplus, so I stay at a constant, let's say, value in euros or dollars or whatever, or something that seems fair for the time I actually spend on this. And I would like the opinion of the community on that when that happens. And this is actually something I would prefer, is if I get more money, then this can be used to pay for more people, or for fund more projects, or this is not clear yet because we're not there yet. But if there's more resources that you can dedicate to achieve the mission that you've set up, it's always better.
Sorry for interrupting. What do you believe is the best course of action personally with respect to that?
Well, I believe that being open is the best course of action, in the sense that whenever Bitshares market cap is going to grow so much that the amount of money that is paid to delegates starts becoming really huge, either there are some delegates that are going to pop up and say, okay, I'm going to do the same job, but I'm going to be cheaper. And then the previous delegates will be voted out by the shareholders, and the new ones that are cheaper will be voted in, because, for the same work provided, you'll pick up like the cheapest option. And I believe that, this is kind of that it comes down to the shareholders deciding, because they're the ones that decide who to vote in or not. And being open, I can say, okay, I'm a 30% delegate, and this represents X amount of euros, and that's too much, but I'm going to burn that much, and you can publicly burn your BTS, and everyone can see it, so people will see that you don't lie, and then you can keep it. Or, we could keep it. You can gather it for some other funds, but I intend to keep the community involved in that decision.
Sure. And for what you're wanting to do in the long term, Do you think it would be more effective if you could hire a team? Do you think it would be worth the? Do you think it would be a viable course of action that would be very worth consideration from the community to actually allow you to hire a team that you kind of essentially like pay?
Well, it depends. It depends what you're developing, but yes, I believe that could be useful. For instance, let's say, not talking about myself right now, but let's say someone is developing, like a web wallet for iOS. There are already people doing that, and competition in the crypto world is gonna be heating up, and there's gonna be lots of wallets, and then you cannot have only one person working half-time on it. Like, you need 5 person dedicated full-time to make a web wallet that's nice, that's really well designed, that works everywhere on iOS, on Android, and all this stuff, that has a lightweight client included, that does, that's basically, something that you really want. And I think there's enough ideas and development possibilities to hire a lot of people. Ideas I have a lot,
Sure. And it's, I guess the reason I ask is because this is something that our community has talked about to a certain extent already. One of the main themes is you have two different opposing sides, right? And I think that you've identified this yourself. You have one side that believes that it should be one delegate per person. And then you have another side that kind of looks at it as the delegates themselves are almost like consulting firms, and it can be one person, but that delegate consultancy can expand to meet the needs of perhaps even larger and ambitious aspects of a project that might have started out with one person. Or you might have, a project that becomes extremely large, and you have one delegate that pays for a number of people who consistently maintain it and keep it going. It's very interesting, and I kind of want to ask this question to every delegate because it's interesting to see where their perspectives are given their unique expertise.
Yes. Well, actually, I think that delegates should be described not as much by the person that's behind them, but by the mission that they set out to do. For instance, my delegate now, before I had a delegate with my name, and now my delegate is called BTS Tools, because the funds go towards the development of the BTS tools. And I believe that delegates should describe what they intend to do. The way I see it, actually, I talk a bit on my website, is that the 101 delegates are kind of like properties of the DAC that people can vote on, and then can say, for instance, if you have if you do some like some role-playing game, whatever, and you have a character, and then you have characteristic, you put +2 strength, +5 stamina, and like +2 healing. And I believe that delegates can serve kind of the same purpose for a DAC. For instance, if you have the Bitshares music DAC, you will want to have +10 organize events and make some kick-ass marketing, And maybe for Bitshares, you don't want that as much, but you'd rather have a +5 network security and +5 core development. And I believe that delegates should, of course, there are going to be people behind these missions that are going to be working towards that goal, but I think that they delegates should have a clear stated goal that they want to fulfill.
I think that you just won over all of the MMO players and D&D fans. So with that answer, what I'm going to go ahead and then I'm going to go to question number 4. What makes you stand out from the crowd?
I would say, the biggest thing that makes me stand out to the crowd is the delegate tools I'm talking about are already published. They're open source. They've been on GitHub since the beginning, so people can already download it. Kind of shows that I'm dedicated, and mostly that, and then I have some experience. Both in C++ and Python. My first contribution to let's say the Bitshares ecosystem was packaging Quixote at the time for OS X and fixing compilation on OS X so that you could compile natively instead of going through GCC. And so I know a bit of C++. I know also a bit of Python, and I'd like to go a bit higher level, see a bit the network structures and maybe that. But I would say mostly my stuff is already open source, and I hope it talks for itself.
Well, perhaps you could link me some of that content in a PM, and when we post your Delegate Hangout to the forums, we could put those links underneath your underneath the actual heading and everything in your Hangout section. From there, we've asked the 4 primary questions. One question that I asked in the first Delegate Hangout that was asked by somebody who was planning on attending but didn't get to was, what system specs are you planning, and what jurisdiction are you in?
So at the moment, so I personally am living in Spain. The server is on a VPS in France. The specs at the moment, I have a dual core with 4 gigabytes of RAM. This is of course upgradable, expandable. Yeah, I can have more. It's a VPS, so basically you can just like make it bigger if needed. And yes.
Thank you for answering the questions from the community who could not make it. I will go ahead, and we have approximately 10 more minutes. And I would like to ask a question here that Island King, who is currently in attendance, asked. It is, I'm very concerned with the lack of delegates providing feeds. Do you plan on providing feeds for oil and silver? And are you planning on helping other delegates set up feeds as well?
Okay, so right now, as part of the BTS tools that I have, I also publish some feeds, which do not use the script from Xerox and Alt and MSkey, maybe, I don't remember exactly. So I only have 5 feeds at the moment, like the main ones. I do plan to provide feeds for the other bit assets. I'm actually working on this right now. Mostly it's just about finding the right APIs. For instance, I've seen that most of the fiat money, like Singapore dollars, Australian dollars, everything is very easy to get from Yahoo. I saw in the forums that feed for oil is not that easy to get by, so people are actually looking for that. But I mean, as soon as it's available, I plan to integrate it. Even more so, given the fact that if you publish multiple feeds as a delegate, it's the same price as publishing only a single one. So basically, I would say that delegates not publishing feeds are just lazy.
Sure. And I kind of attribute it to a lack of understanding for some of them. And I think that we're reaching a point now where education, and I love the tools that you're talking about, that you've provided, and I was largely unaware of them until you posted your proposal. I'm a very big proponent personally of educating everybody and trying to lower the barriers to entry. Obviously, that's why we have Hangout style events. I will reach out right now and say thank you for providing tools, because I think the easier that we make this for the community to be able to do this, the more your argument that is potentially laziness.
Not only that, but for instance, when I started like running my delegate, I realized that I was juggling between multiple terminals and upgrading and this, and I'm used to doing it because I've been doing that for the last, I don't know how many years, but I understand that's not that easy, and also it takes time, and it's kind of it's boring, and it's grunt work, you know. And I'd like to. There's something I'm really fond of is automatizing like those tasks, those repetitive tasks and boring tasks, so that basically you can just say push the start button, you know, like you prepare everything, config file as well, then you push the start button and you let it run, and that's the reason also the tools provide feeds, because I don't want to have like the delegate running in one terminal and then like the feed script running in another terminal and then some other script running in another terminal, and then if one crashes but the other two keep running, then I don't know, and how do I know that it crashes? So that was the idea basically of putting everything under the umbrella of the tools that manage this stuff for you, because publishing feeds is something that should be automatic. Like you shouldn't have to publish it manually, of course. I mean, you're not going to spend a day in front of your computer like copy pasting feeds from Yahoo, but as should all the other, I would say, technical tasks of the delegate. And because the view I have is the delegates should provide some added value. So basically running the delegate and catering to the delegate duties should be as little work as possible.
Yeah, I think that it's hard right now because it's still such a young ecosystem. And of course, a lot of us have been here for almost over a year now, so to a lot of us, we're thinking it should be, all prepared and everything. But we also have to recognize to a large degree that in my opinion, that most of the development has gone on while we've been active in the community and watching it develop. Most of the time with projects, they would have not even let anybody know what was going on until they released, in the closed source proprietary world anyway. The beta would be released, the open beta would be released after a year of people just wondering what's going on behind the scenes. So it is kind of interesting to see that dynamic. I appreciate you showing up. We're at about 31 minutes. So we're going to need to leave about 2 minutes for the introduction and for the ending. Do you have anything that you would like to say as a final remark?
Well, I'd like to thank you for having me on the Hangout, and I'd like also to engage the community to communicate either with me directly via PM on the forums, or if they have some needs for the tools or whatever, to put like issues and report bugs in the GitHub tracker. And that's pretty much it. I mean, very glad to be part of this community. I think it's a really interesting mix of people, and I'm really excited to see what we're going to do in the future.
Well, I'm really excited to see where this is going to go as well, with people like you who are very interested in this, and you're very welcome for this service. Would you be willing to, in the future, have future delegate hangouts to provide updates, project updates, things like that, if you were to get voted in?
Sure, definitely. I mean, again, I believe that delegates, it's one thing to get voted in, but then you also need to show that you should stay voted in. And so no problem for me there.
Sounds good. Well, thank you very much, Wackou.